Welcome to another Perspectives podcast. It's Josue here. It's the man himself. I am from the Democratic Republic of Congo, as most of you guys probably already know by now. Sometimes I preach. I don't know. Sometimes I love Jesus all the time, and I'm here. You know, I'm quarantining like most people are. And we have Mr. Chase Brown himself. He's a fellow Texan. He attended the University of North Texas. He's an aspiring philanthropic creative. He likes writing books, long walks on the beach, and other things. I'm just joking. How you doing, Chase Brown? Yeah, and he is handsome, if I didn't mention that already. So
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a beach in a minute.
Okay.
And actually, hot take. I kind of prefer lakes over beaches. So
that's strange.
A little bit of a hey man,
yeah.
Like if
that's a hot take for sure.
If there's a boat and we got some skis and some tubing, I'm down. I'm down with the lake. But how have you been, man?
I've been good, man. I've been quarantining. For those of you guys that didn't know, our friend Corona came and visited me. And so, I had my little interaction with Corona. And so I've been quarantining and recovering. So I'm a recovering addict. That was a joke, by the way. So just a little comedy to make it lighthearted. But like you guys know, whenever we get on here, we always have a special guest. And today we have a very special guest from a place that's very far away. I don't even know how far away it is, but I can see it on the map right now. We have Mr. Jordan Madden.
That's me.
Madden, that's him. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent, gentlemen. Excellent. It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Thank you for coming on and joining us in this conversation.
Yeah,
no worries.
Yeah,
because it's great because we've only really known each other for a little bit. Thanks to that dude Reward.
Shout out to Reward.
Yeah. Having a, what would you call it? I guess a dinner party?
That was a dinner party, I believe.
Yeah. It's a solid dinner party.
Yeah. just having some fellowship. Just having some friends over from different circles, being able to meet each other, just different parts of the body, the church, being able to interact, see what we're all doing, see what God's got on our hearts. And it was awesome during that time being able to learn a little bit about you, being able to hear some of the things that the Lord had been doing through you and your wife, Amanda. And like Josue and I, after the dinner, were just like, we got to get this dude.
Yeah, we got to bring him on. Yeah, now we're here, so we were able to make it happen. But just while we have you here, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood spent in Australia? I don't think I really know a lot of people from Australia. So for me, this is going to be educational. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, to answer that first question, the distance, I believe my flight over was about 40 hours.
40?
40.
Wow.
But that's because I had a couple of stops in between.
I
think if you're direct, it's about 23 hours.
23 hours.
Pretty solid. It's a long time.
Yeah.
But down in the southern hemisphere, I grew up. Grew up by the beach, not by lakes. Although I do love lakes, definitely grew up by the beach and just loved it, man. Loved it. Grew up in Christmas is hot as anything. And this time right now is the winter. So, actually African American mum, Australian dad. He's Irish and Australian, and so grew up in a place called the Gold Coast on the East Coast. And beautiful place to live. Grew up a believer. Australia is definitely not a Christian nation like America is, although there are a whole lot of Christians there.
Yeah.
Definitely
grateful for you coming on because we've had Jordan Hornbuckle on the podcast.
Yeah.
And
he spent some time in Australia.
Yeah. He was a friend of mine from high school who went to Hillsong.
Oh, so cool.
And so he shared a little bit about Australian culture from a kind of American's perspective.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool, just being able to get his story over there and some of the things that the Lord did while he was over there. But yeah, I know one of the things that we were wanting to discuss today was just kind of this being a continuation of our little mini series of first generation Americans, where we bring on people who were born overseas and being able to give them the opportunity to just kind of share a little bit about their culture and what they see in American culture and some of the uniquenesses of their perspective, just being able to illuminate what American culture is really like, because sometimes us Americans can be blind to different things.
Yeah.
And so...
As we all can.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
true that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so kind of just to start off, I think what would be really cool, because you discussed it a little bit at dinner, is just to kind of share a little bit about what your story was like as you traveled over here, as you came over to America, what God was doing in your heart during that time. And then as well, maybe a little bit, because I think it was kind of around the time when you moved over, when you found Amanda and everything like that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Cool. So yeah, I guess that's part of the funnest part of my story, I guess. I was not wanting to come to America at all. And so my goal was to just stay in Australia, had no desire to move here, anything like that. But what I did desire was to come over on holiday. That's actually vacation as far as Americans are concerned. But yeah, it was over on holiday. It's even a divine story there, in that I was actually meant to come over for someone's wedding that got cancelled. And so ended up coming over and just doing a 3-week trip, just me and Jesus, just see the American countryside, the great mountains. So, I mean, there's not a single mountain.
Mountains of Texas.
Yeah, that wasn't what led me to Texas. That's what led me to California.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was about to say.
Absolutely. That was one thing when I drove into Texas, how abundantly flat the land is. Yeah.
Flat, yeah.
So, yeah, but beautifully flat.
Yeah, we can
To
keep
all
it
the
at that.
Texans out there. Yeah. So I came here. Upper Room was a big YouTube star at the time, and I loved their worship. For many out there that listen to Upper Room, I saw Joel dancing around in one of the clips, and I was just like, "These are my people."
Yeah.
So I ended up coming over and wanting to go to the conference in 2018. Now, long story short, coming over, just had a blast, just Jesus the whole way. Fired up Australian guy with a random accent, just praying for people in the streets and having a blast, But I ended up sitting behind a very beautiful young lady.
That's usually how it starts.
Yeah. I was in the row behind her. I was not thinking beautiful ladies. I was thinking Jesus. You're my everything here, and so. And I think that's how he got me. I was not thinking. I'm like driving into Dallas, thinking in my head, I'm going to be celibate forever. I'm going to live with Jesus the rest of my life, and no lady in my life. Ended up meeting her, and she turned everything around. So I am now married to Amanda Madden. Do you want me to go into detail there?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, so long story short, divine how we ended up getting together. So she was sitting in the row in front of me, was passing out chocolates, and that was it. We ended up all I got was her first name, and the Lord gave me a word for her the next day. Went and gave her the word, and I know I'm going back to Australia, so I'm definitely not trying to make any moves, anything like that. So in my head, I'm just like, okay, I can't like lead someone on, but we end up getting coffee and just talking. This transpires into the following day. After we knew there was a connection, we kind of both said to each other, looked at each other, and we were like, you know what? If the Lord's going to bring us together, He is able to do it. I'm going... I'm on this road trip. I'm going to North Carolina, and there's no distance too great for him to bring us together if it's His will. So, so I trust Him, and I'm not going to get a phone number, not going to get an email address, not going to get anything.
Wow.
All I had was her first name, and so away I went on my trip, and I tell you what, fellas. No word of a lie, the rest of my trip, I could not stop thinking about it. Every place I went, it was just like, and I even asked the Lord, would you please remove the memory of this woman out of my heart? And you know how you do. You're like, why do I fall so easily? But He ended up he actually said to me, I heard it clear as day. Well, what if I put it there?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay.
I got you.
Yeah. Well, then in that case, it's okay. I was in North Carolina at a conference seeing Todd White and Dan Moeller preach, and I was absolutely loving it. But there was just this tug in my heart to come back to Upper Room, what God was doing at Upper Room, but then also the possibility that I might see Amanda again. So a short detour from North Carolina to Dallas. I mean, just a 15-hour drive.
Yeah, not too bad.
Not too bad.
Compared to a 23-hour flight?
It's nothing. So I swung down quite easily down to Dallas, and just so happened that she was at the service that I made, which was the Sunday night service, and she was saving a seat for someone she didn't know, didn't know was even coming, and Holy Spirit had told her to save that seat. So we sat together, we talked for 6 hours, and I went home. Yeah, we talked for 6 hours after the service, that is. I should say, how crazy is this? There was a flippin' fireworks show. Like we're at the church in the parking lot, and across the parking lot there's fireworks going off. So if you're ever in doubt, is this my wife? Ask the Lord, show us fireworks.
I'm still waiting for the fireworks. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's what you're waiting for.
That's what I'm waiting for. Okay.
Well, if he did it for me, you can do it for you,
ladies, I'm waiting for the fireworks. All right, that's all that is. It's a joke. We'll edit that part.
But I went back home, decided, actually at this point I had her last name, not just her first name, and her home address. Still no electronics. We wrote letters for 5 months. I moved here in October of October 21st of 2018. And with the goal to pursue her for marriage. And hey, now we're married. We live in Dallas. We love it. And one day we'll return to Australia, but for now, this is home. And and I love it. So.
Yeah, and it's so good. I know something that y'all share is that appreciation for that dude, Dan Moeller.
Oh,
The man.
Yeah.
Dan,
Shout
if you're
out
out
to Dan.
there, if you're listening to this, you've changed many a life.
Yeah.
Me included.
My guy.
Thank
Shout
you.
out to Dan. I saw him, I think in February or something like that. And he's just how he comes off in the videos, man, just genuine and full of life.
Yeah.
Like I was like, low-key, this guy's a celebrity. He's like my celebrity.
Yeah,
I don't care about other
absolutely.
celebrities, but for me, he was like a celebrity. So it was pretty cool.
I'm not gonna lie, I totally had social media envy. You know how not like the world has it. When I saw that you had met him, when I saw you on Instagram, you had a photo with him. I was just like, Lord, Lord, let it be so. I'm not supposed to envy my brother.
Man, I kid you not. I was literally sitting in service like a kid. I was just like, what is he talking about? I don't know. I just know that we'll meet him afterwards. And I met him afterwards and I got to talk to him and I was just like, wow, like, this is incredible. But enough about me. Let's go back to this God bringing things together, because it seems like an interesting conversation for me. So did you intentionally not connect in terms of electronically and chose the more old-fashioned route in terms of sending letters?
We did. And this was intentional by the Spirit and just by the Spirit of wisdom, in that I've failed so many times doing it the normal Western way, where you date and you're connected, you do life together, and really what I've found that it produces is a almost like a pseudo covenant relationship without the covenant, and it's a really dangerous place, because and that's why so many in the world, like, they live together without being married and whatnot, and really what it is it's experiencing the benefits of covenant without the covenant, without the covering and the spiritual covering of it. And it's a dangerous road to walk. And I'd experienced the consequences of that danger zone so many times. So on one side, like, my heart was wary. And then on the other side, I could just see this would be really beautiful if, like, I just got to know her by the Spirit, you know? Because I didn't know her. Like, I'd met her twice. We'd spent a total of maybe 7 hours together. So, like, what do you put in a letter? You know, what do you put in a letter every month? It had to be something that God gave. So every letter was based on just spending time with the Lord, hearing from him, asking him what scriptures, and then just prophetically writing. Like, I had no idea what season she was in at that time, let alone when the letter would actually arrive to her.
Yeah.
So it was a journey of faith. And and the crazy thing was he was so faithful in it, because every letter that she'd write me, it had things in it that were pertinent to that exact time frame, you know, and vice versa. So I think the breath of God that was on it was what made it so beautiful and made it so fruitful. And so I think we miss something in our modern version of dating that former generations kind of got to experience, you know? So,
Yeah, and I love it because we talked a little bit about Upper Room and that guy Miller before this, and in one of his conversations or one of his messages in his sermon series right now, he discusses how technology, we can so often see it's just solely for our benefit, but where in embracing it, we've lost some things of the past.
Yeah.
And so, for example, in going with letters rather than text messages, it makes you, I would think in that case, value much more the interaction that you had with Amanda at that time because of the time that it takes. But then as well, it produces, I think, this fruit of patience, but as well, like, I don't want to say caution, but just not writing down words flippantly that you so easily would in a text, because you're just like, oh, if I mess up, like, I can just send a new one in 5 minutes, or I'm going to send 50 more tonight and she's going to still know who I am. But you're going to have self-control and be very intentional, I think, with what you're doing. And I love that because I think not a lot of people have that nowadays.
Yeah, you're right. It forces a depth, you know? It's almost awkward to be super deep over text message, whereas in a letter, it would be awkward to be shallow. It would be so awkward to receive a letter that's just filled with what you put in a text message. So and I think that's something, even in the language, the structure of how you write a sentence, it just changes. So, I for one am an advocate for bringing back the letters for dating.
So good.
I mean, we obviously didn't bring you here to talk about relationships, but since we're here, might as well. So, I mean, something that Chase said, it kind of really sparked a question for me. What is that like? He talked about, what was the word used? Patience?
Yeah, like a fruit of patience.
Fruit of patience. So let's just be real. You know, sometimes, whenever, you meet a young lady and you're texting, you send her a message and then it's been 5 minutes and no response and you're still waiting. And then an hour goes by and you're like, man, I think I got the wrong number. There's all these different things that come to your mind. But what is that like, waiting for a letter to come across the sea on a pigeon, or however you guys were sending these letters? Like, what is that
this
like?
Isn't Harry Potter.
It's not Harry Potter.
We don't have an owl.
Like, tell me about this patience. I want to know. I want to understand this patience.
Absolutely. So it begins like a slow knife to the heart. No, I'm joking. It's not quite that painful, but it does definitely begin with pain in the flesh, because I think relationships, a certain element of relationships is the heart flutters and the flux of emotion of those interactions. And so this being so stretched out, you don't, it's really difficult to go on that flow when it's so long in between contact. So what it did was it revealed my heart, and it revealed my my need for Jesus to satisfy the places that I was looking for satisfaction through positive female to male interaction, and that was a beautiful thing, because it's like, okay, this is something that needed to be ripped out of my heart anyway prior to marriage, and I had no idea that it was even there, and it's the way that God highlight something that's like, hey, I want to take you deeper, and without you even realizing it, it's a journey that I really wanted to go with her. Of actually learning to love her, but a major part of love is patience, right? And how can I learn patience if I'm driven by impulse and driven by communicating for what I can receive from that communication? So it turned into a truly selfless version of communication, because if I'm writing something to get something from her, then it's good. For one, it's going to be pretty obvious, and for two, there's not going to be any payoff until for a month, maybe even 2 months, because it takes a month to get to her, and then a month to get back, kind of a thing. And so I think it provided an opportunity for me to become what I already thought I was as a man of God who loves selflessly, and it revealed my heart that there was still areas where I was seeking gratification from interaction. So
yeah, that's just so good. And just trusting the Lord in that. And then as well, just continuing on with, I'm sure, the plan that he had given you before you even came over here, of going to Texas and then going to North Carolina. And so practically pursuing him and his kingdom first, and then just trusting whatever else will be added. Yeah. Is so good. And so, man, I love the tangents that we go on.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's so good.
I hope y'all listeners were able to get some value out of that.
Yeah,
because I know us, me and Josue being two single men, got some value out of that.
I have no idea how you two are single. It doesn't make sense.
I don't know how it changes.
It doesn't make sense. No, you too, bro.
No,
you two are men of God.
I'm shy.
Oh,
Bro, don't say this. You're the life of the party at every wedding. Let a man get
I'm shy. Do my best.
And so, cool. So kind of going back to the topic.
Can I say one thing just before
Go
that?
ahead.
I will say to anyone out there who may be in that place of doing it in the way where you do get that instant gratification, the Lord definitely can teach you through that, and definitely don't get condemned, because Holy Spirit is wanting to bring you into his ways of doing things.
So good.
And definitely don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. My story is not it's not something to emulate, except for that it was a story of trusting Holy Spirit and letting him do it. So in your circumstance, exactly where you are, you can let Holy Spirit lead you, and it's going to be just as beautiful a story, just look different. Yeah. So
I was about to book a plane ticket to Spain, bro. Trying to do my own version, but that was good too.
so good.
As Chase is laughing, I do have a question. Kind of going back to everything. What is Australian culture? I've always been fascinated by that. I don't really know. I think the closest I've gotten is just a couple friends that are American but Australian. So if you could break that down, what does that look like? Can you give us some similarities, maybe some differences?
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the most common things of Australian culture that you'll hear is we're very laid back, and that's so true. It's so laid back, so relaxed. It's like so much of American life is just way more fast paced than you'd get in Australia, and part of that's probably because so much of the country is on the coast, so the water's right there, the beach is just there. It's hard to not be laid back, but from a contrast perspective, I think Australia is a much younger culture. So a lot of what it receives is from England anyway. And so we're a very different culture in that I think the American culture of I guess the best way I can explain it is I guess freedom as the ultimate ideal, and Republican, a republic, not Republican as in on the right side of politics, but living in a republic and a democratic republic, and just being free in that in that sense is held up as the highest ideal is very different in that many people are engaged in very different ways over here. Many people are social activists. Many people are just have strong opinions. Many people are super patriots and all of that. Whereas you'd find the majority of Australians are just in the middle, just trying to live out their lives and go about everyday life, and they don't really care too much. And for that reason, you have like a certain just like love of country in a sense, and just a go with the flow kind of attitude. You know, it's a very interesting dynamic given that we're only 110 years old. So, so most of our culture comes from England and it comes from America, and we just kind of take from that, you know, see what you guys do wrong and then, and then adapt it into our culture.
Yeah, because I know something you said over dinner was Australia is almost like American's little brother whenever it comes to culture, and especially when it gets to the church, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Hopefully it's something where y'all are both able to pick up on, you know, good things that American church does and embraces, but as well learn from like our mistakes and things like that. And a thought that I had, I don't know if it has any validity to it, but just a thought that I want to throw out. If y'all want to add anything, you can. I think one of the possible reasons why Americans and American culture can tend to feel this pressure for work and work ethic and fast pace is because basically the eyes of the world are on us. And we have been told since day one that the world's economy at one point or another, or now, depends on us, depends on our work, and we're the leader in everything. And so naturally from there, we feel like, oh, well, we have to keep all this going if we want our society to continue to flourish, but then as well, if we want to care for people in disadvantaged situations across the globe or even next to us. To whereas maybe Australia being something that I don't know if it's as a byproduct of being isolated a little bit more or just being younger. They don't feel that they don't feel that pressure of maybe producing things. So do y'all have any thoughts to add with that?
It is an interesting perspective. I think so that's such an interesting take, because it's almost ascribing a collective motive to the engine of the American dream, if you will. Which one aspect of the American dream that's really unique is its individualism, in that every person can make something of themselves. But that's something I've never really considered, is the collective goal of making America the
best version of itself, whatever you want to call it.
And then taking that on as a personal responsibility. That's definitely something that I don't think we have in Australia. There is definitely the individual version where it's like sky's the limit, own as many houses as you can and farm the land and, you know, buy as many cool cars, utes. We call them utes.
Utes? Okay.
Utes. Ute is a utility vehicle. It's like a car / truck thing. Yeah.
Kind of like a crossover type thing. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a really random thought that I had. And I think maybe that was more true for like previous generations, especially whenever, because I feel like this, like my generation and Gen Z afterwards is a little bit more entitled and a little bit more individualistic than the generation that was raised, or the main generation back in kind of the 40s through the 80s. When America was growing, and there was that strong sense of patriotism and collective effort in everyone. And I don't know if that was a byproduct of American culture or things that America was facing at that time, Cold War or whatever. But I don't know.
That's an interesting take, because the Soviets definitely had that, didn't they? And they were the main opposing force after the Second World War, and they had a collectivist mindset of making the Soviet Union great. So so that's a really interesting perspective that I've never considered. I like that.
Yeah. And I think kind of taking it to church or kingdom perspective, and then we go the next kind of question or thought from there. Like, I think potentially if we adopt something like that, or maybe that is already a characteristic of the kingdom, I'm not sure, it is just like, all right, let's sanctify this and make this as sacred as possible, like here on earth. Maybe that's just what, like, have your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just this sense of like pursuing sanctification and holiness and honoring God as much as we can, both at the individual level, but then the collective level, like at the church. And so, but maybe going off of the culture question for Australian culture, maybe from there, since we kind of just brought it up, what would you say is maybe the culture or characteristics of like the Australian church and compared to the American church, whether it's the size of the churches or the lean in like charismatic or reformed or anything along those lines?
Yeah, really great question. I would say, so given Australia is so much smaller, as well as so much younger, you don't have as much influence on the overall church. So at the time when Australia was really in its early days of formation, there was the main movement that was around at that time was the Assemblies of God movement that came out of Azusa Street. So as a result, you actually have a massive number of Pentecostal churches in Australia, ranging from conservative Pentecostal through to wackadoo Pentecostal. So you got the whole range, and then a small minority would be your Baptists and Methodists and Lutherans, Catholics, all of that. But I think probably the most dominant culture today is the charismatic version of Pentecostalism that has come out of Hillsong.
Yeah.
So you have Hillsong. C3 is another large movement, but they are a very similar version to Hillsong anyway. So if you look at their version of Christianity, what they believe on paper versus the style of church that they actually live out and walk out, it's very similar. And it's very similar to your mainline Pentecostal churches of America in like Elevation and Hillsong America and so on. So it's an interesting dynamic. You have a lot more diversity here in America. And that's largely because of the size, but then also the age of the church here. There's a long-standing history in America, whereas you've got such a short history there.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess it's the question everybody's kind of wanting me to ask. I feel that tension to ask Hillsong, right? So by Hillsong, man, they've impacted the world with music since I came to America. I thought they were Americans. I didn't know. So if you could kind of just speak about Hillsong for a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, because I know at dinner you had some thoughts. So really, you're open to share whatever you want.
Absolutely. So my opinion of Hillsong has changed over the years. My early days was a very critical take on Hillsong. Very, very aligned with your modern day criticisms from the Reformed crowd that would say Hillsong is preaching a prosperity gospel, this, that, and the other of just why it's not actually Christian. And as I grew to know the Lord more, naturally his heart began to have more of an effect on me. And so now, like from an Australian perspective, I think there would like a lot of people in Australia would love for the Australian church to break free from the Hillsong model. And the reason being is because Hillsong serves such a beautiful function in the church in that it is a wide open door for the world to come into the church and be introduced to Christ in in a palatable and solid way, and hear me right, like genuinely there is in every Hillsong church, there is, whether it's in its small phase or in a fully developed phase, goals to genuinely win people to Christ. Like it is the goal. Now, lots of opinions around their methodology that can be argued at different tables, but all in all, the Lord clearly has a purpose in bringing people into his kingdom through Hillsong.
Yeah.
Now, I think the reason why a lot of people would want to break free in Australia is because there are a lot of mature Christians in Australia who want to go deeper, who want more than a 25 sermonette, 25-minute sermonette, and that is mostly milk, and in a lot of ways Hillsong has to cater to that. They have so many new believers.
It's understandable.
Yeah, it's totally understandable, and it serves a purpose in the kingdom. So my opinion of Hillsong, great doorway in. Probably can't stay there for the long haul, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that's a good nuanced perspective and thought on it, because like one of the factors, which is one of the things that we talked about at dinner, was with the fact of Australia and America being a capitalist system.
Yeah.
At that point, church, and to some degree, is a business, and the means of you got to just keep the doors open and the lights on. And
Correct.
so
Sadly, yeah.
And so from there, like one of the things that we discussed is there's the possibility of, if you get into the deeper layers of faith and more, such as, just for examples, like talking about like the ugliness of sin and things like that, that could open the potential to turn people away and things like that. Then from there affect the potential ability to keep the doors open. Yeah. And so from there, one of the things, like as believers, that we just need to take the leap on is that, like, God is our source of provision. Like the Father is, and not our ability to cater to those people who are currently attending the church. Yeah. And so I definitely agree with your thoughts. So like Hillsong has a valuable place in the kingdom and the church right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I love what you're saying there, because what you're hitting on is, it's like the difference between a genuine faith-filled and faith-based church, in that if we are meant to exist, we're going to exist by his grace. And if we fall and the Lord allows this structure of what we've built to fall, it was his in the beginning and it's his in the end anyway. So we're going to preach the truth, teach the truth, walk the road of faith, and trust him either way, and not grasp after the things that he's given us. And I think that's a beautiful heart. That is the struggle of, it's not just a collective struggle of a church. It's also the individual struggle of every Christian, of like, who is my provider and who holds my life? And ultimately, if it all falls apart, like, am I still content with him overall? Is he my life, or are things and my job and my house and everything like that my life, So,
So in terms of, I feel like most of the people in the conversation we've had about, first-gen Americans and all that stuff, most of them have come at a younger age, so their experiences have been different. You've been the first one that was a lot older. So how was that for you? I'm not sure how old you are presently, but you say you came here about 2 years ago?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. I'm 31 now.
31 now, okay. Nice. So, by then, you kind of already had a worldview, right?
Yeah,
you kind of already had, this is Australia, the good, the bad, the ugly, and all that stuff. And then coming to America, completely different culture, similar culture in a way. In trying to understand America, fit in, the word that we use is assimilate. It's a really big word, SAT word. So what was that dynamic like for you?
It was interesting. From a social perspective, I think there are just certain aspects of Australian humor that Americans just don't get by and large.
Yeah.
We're a very sarcastic people, very tongue in cheek, we call it. And it's just subtle jokes and sarcastic jokes. And I'd say things that I thought were hilarious.
Yeah.
People thought I was completely serious, and they just look at me kind of funny and weird. And so I had to just adapt to that over time. Now, my wife explains it to people when I say jokes like that. She goes, "He's joking. He's just messing with you."
Yeah.
And so so then they awkwardly do like the nose laugh. You know? Thank you.
I know exactly what you mean.
So that was an interesting road to walk. I do look forward to being around Aussies again and just having a good laugh at some sarcastic jokes. But I think the community, or like the greater culture, America's fascinating, man. There is so much to feast on as far as interesting culture. And there's such deep, old, real, genuine, difficult questions and struggles that are going on here that we just don't have. Like we have things that you could say are comparable, but are much, much smaller in scale and in complexity by comparison to the greater culture of America. So for a thinker like myself who likes to analyze things first coming here, it's just fascinating. And you have to have a choice at some point to say, I'm not just going to be a spectator. I'm going to step in and buy in and choose to invest as to whether or not I care about the outcome of these things. And that's been an interesting and hard battle for me, because on the one hand, I can just go back to a really laid back beach lifestyle in Australia, and have my opinions about what America is like and what the struggles and the issues that are here are. Or I can dive in and choose a laid down life in this nation and actually invest into these issues and see them turned around for the kingdom. So so that's kind of an interesting aspect of assimilation from a spiritual perspective that I'm still at the moment grappling with and going through. Because naturally in the kingdom, when you see a problem, you see that, or the Lord gives you some sort of a solution, you then have the choice. Okay, are you going to die and be that and implement that? Or are you going to just tell someone else about it and walk away? So
and it's so good because we kind of touched on this topic beforehand. So I guess a little background. One of the books I'm reading right now is called The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell. It's one of his early books that he wrote.
Orwell is the man.
His literary style is amazing because this is the first book by Orwell that I've ever read. And so for a little context for the book, in the first half, he describes his experience of living with coal miners in northern UK for a few months, just describing their living conditions, working conditions, and everything along those lines, which is some of the most graphic and just honestly heartbreaking things that I've ever read. And then in the second book, or in the second part, he goes back to London after this experience, and he's basically asking, okay, so these, in his terms, this bourgeoisie, these wealthy people, even these middle-class people, there's these class distinctions that they say they're trying to break down, but they're not really putting in the effort to break down, yet intellectually they say they care about this working class community, whether it's the miners or the tramps or anything like that. And so for him, he goes through this intellectual exercise of like, okay, so do these people really mean what they say, and are their motivations really there? And his conclusion for some of the people at that time was that they don't really care about the working class. They aren't sacrificing in any way. They just essentially, this will be a strong word, but they essentially hate the rich, those that are higher than them in the hierarchy. And so we see from Orwell's observations in the book and his conclusions, but as well, I think we can see in our culture today here in America that some people aren't willing to get involved and get invested into the communities to help solve like these issues that we're seeing. Some of the people just want to talk about it on an intellectual level and debate all day and night without partnering that with getting involved in the community. And I'll say I think I speak for both Josue and myself, like we're really encouraged by seeing you who for better or for worse doesn't really have too much of a stake in the game, because as you said, you could go home at any time with Amanda, yet you are being bold and caring for the community that you're in at this moment. And so one of the things I want to offer you is, would you have any sort of wisdom or encouragement that you would like to share with people who maybe consciously or unconsciously are struggling with apathy and not getting involved in their communities and like not loving on their communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a major part of that is it's the road of love, for one. And it's also, especially coming from a Christian perspective, I think a lot of people, we've almost even been through times of peace, we've been conditioned to expect the next level in our Christian walk that every one of our hearts is yearning for and is looking for: deeper, greater knowledge of Christ, more of his heart, more of his ways. We've been conditioned to expect that through spiritual experience and through maybe through the next worship service, maybe through an incredible, I don't know, sermon or something, or an encounter at a conference. But the reality of where that actually is it's found in a laid down life. And the laid down life is right there in front of you in the places you don't want to go. I'm reminded of this incredible poem by George MacDonald, where he's having this conversation with the Lord about him being in a field. And he's like, I want to remain in the field. The field is beautiful. And this is where you are. And the Lord is giving him this invitation into the city. And he's resistant to the city because it's dark there and it's dirty and it's filthy. And the Lord is saying, but there's more there. There's so much more there. There's sin and there's people that need to be set free from it. And ultimately it comes to this conclusion of, what will you choose? Will you choose the flowers of the field, or will you choose the crown that your heart has always been going for? And the encouragement that I give is that there is a crown in your community in how you could love even the person that lives maybe in the apartment next to you, or what maybe it's just the people that you encounter at your grocery store or whatever. And even if you aren't the kind of person that necessarily goes out and evangelizes on the street, you know how to wake up early in the morning and you know how to claim and pray over, say, just one street or say just one area. Like that's something that costs you something. It's something that's difficult, and it's something that's going to join you to the heart of Christ. And so there are things that in our apathy and in our not knowing what to do, especially in the climate we're in right now, where like so many people are like, what do I do with my hands? You know what I mean? Just like,
all right, Will Ferrell, chill.
Yeah. Just like, I've got no idea what the next steps are. And there are definitely practical things that can be done if you're willing to do them. But I think a lot of the time our brain puts those into the I'm not doing that category before we've fully assessed it. And those things that are in the I don't want to do that category, that's where the crown is, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dang. Because that's so good. Because that's laying down your life and picking up your cross.
100%.
And that self-denial and doing those things that are against the flesh. And I mean, I think we could just see that as well in Abraham, of being willing to get out of his comfort zone and his family and pursuing God's plan for him. So
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So I have a serious question. It's not super serious. I also have a very stupid question. It's a little very stupid. So I guess the more serious question is, I guess just, during your 2 years now and kind of just being part of the culture or trying to understand the culture, understanding and all that stuff, what are some of the things that you can kind of see where, we can make an improvement, from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
And then my second, more lighthearted question, kangaroos. It's about the kangaroos. What do you think what do you think they say about Australia, if that makes sense?
What do I think?
Like, what have you learned
kangaroo?
from them? Yeah, like, what have you learned from them? I know it's a very dumb question, but there's a point to why I'm asking that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think there's value. They're quite a unique creature.
They are. I don't understand them. They're very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Their preferred mode of travel as well is to hop, to leap, and to bound as well. And for a nation that is so young, we've come a long way. Lots of things that just, it's so funny that I'm philosophizing a kangaroo right now.
Like, let me ask.
This is so good. That's just to go off of that point of leaps and bounds. I think there's a lot of things that other nations have tried to do that we've implemented and it's worked. And largely it's because we had the benefit of hindsight. And so hindsight of what other people have tried to do and failed. That's what I would say there is of the leap. They're a feisty creature, the kangaroo.
Yeah.
Don't get kicked by one because they will take you down. They'll send you flying. So, and they have claws and they bite, but that's enough about that.
Yeah.
On the first question, I answered the second one first. On the first question, some areas of improvement. I think one thing that's hard for all of us is to take a big step back and to look objectively. And that's one thing that I would really love to see more Americans do, is really take a big step back and look from a broader perspective at the overall social issues, social concerns, all of it, their greater meaning and their greater depth. Because the current model of thinking is by nature polarizing, and so it's like red is getting redder and blue is getting bluer, and there used to be at one point light blue and pink shades or something like that, and that's a very, very different version now. That's very different. And I think it's largely because of the way that people think about things. I've been able to come in to this not necessarily with like you say, with lots of skin in the game. I've been able to look at it really objectively. I think if you change the way you think about things, you change, and people will genuinely start to change their actions around things, and you'll be able to really tackle problems head on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And that's something that like we've kind of been working on with the project that we've been working on the weekends.
Oh, yeah.
Over the last little bit. And hopefully we can reach that goal. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we're imperfect, so we can see what happens with that. But I definitely love that perspective, because I think everyone, especially here, like in America, can get so caught up in, I think, simply identifying with different things or different ideas. And so then from there, when something is brought up, immediately it's thought of as a like personal attack rather than just simply an idea. And so like some that are being talked about in the culture right now, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with either of these. These are just examples, but like an idea of like white privilege,
Yeah.
or an idea that black individuals commit more crime, or that Hispanic individuals like cross the border more often than whatever. And so again, like I said, don't agree or disagree with any of those.
Yeah.
Those are just examples. And so from there, anytime something of what we deem as our identity, which is another topic of what our identity should be in Christ. But anytime like we feel our identity is attacked, then from there we can tend to go into this defensive mode rather than pursuing humility and just trying to look at it from the objective idea standpoint. And I think that's for all of us.
Yeah.
And especially, I think this may be a random question. Do you think Australians or Americans are more emotional on a general level?
That's a really great question. I think there's probably a consistency in how emotional humans are, but like across the board. But America is definitely more free in the ability to publicly express those emotions. Australia is intentionally suppressive of emotions.
Okay.
Almost, and we really do get that from England. It's like rude almost to be emotional in public, you know. So, but nonetheless, people are feeling those emotions underneath it. They're just good at suppressing it, you know. So
and so I think something that maybe we as Americans need to step into is one, self-control. Especially like those of us who are Christians here in America, step into self-control of emotions. I did a leadership study of King David years ago, and I saw that was one of the characteristics that he had in his leadership was self-control of emotions, and then as well partnering the freedoms that our government or country like strives to give us with also like responsibility within that of being responsible citizens, or in our case believers. And so for example, with freedom of expression and everything like that, like just because we have the freedom of that shouldn't mean that we abuse that. Like we should be responsible, and I mean that's something that, going to a point you brought up earlier with just freedom, I think I may have brought this up earlier on a different podcast, but I think us as Americans don't really have the proper understanding of what freedom means, because we just kind of think it's almost like, oh, you're free to literally do whatever you want, and without having any sort of responsibility partnered along with that. To whereas a biblical idea of freedom is somewhat constrained within, like freedom is found within where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. But categorically with that, like that means that you're within obedience to the Spirit. And so certain things are cut off. And so I think we need to, especially those of us within the church in America, need to return to like potentially a proper way of thinking about freedoms and things like that. But yeah, those were a couple good thoughts. I definitely love that you brought those up.
Actually, there's a fair bit there that's really solid from what you're saying, and like really interesting points. I think one thing on freedom, especially on like the abuse of the freedom of what people can say, I think there's a difference between what can be legislated and administered from a governing body as opposed to a societal structure of non-tolerance. Like there are certain words right now that I grew up with people saying in high school and in primary school that are just completely eradicated from my vocabulary. Now, is that because the government mandated that I don't say that? No, it's because my society at large requires of me to be a decent human being. And according to that, there are some words that have just been pushed out of language. Now, naturally, people are going to still cross those lines. One of the excellent examples of that is right now you can't go to jail in America for saying the N-word as a white person, but you sure as anything are going to get backlash from black and white people for saying it. And that's something that we should allow the freedom of anyone to say whatever they say from a legislative perspective, and as a result, reject bad ideas and I guess the things that people say that are horrible at a societal level of the social level, where it's like that's just not socially acceptable. And so those two things are very, very different. And I think on that point, which is it is a really good point. It's like where do we draw the line as Christians? Like I'm kind of thinking about some controversial things that like you may have seen it on, like I got some emails on about a video that came out about Jesus on Netflix, for example, right? And I remember looking at it and being absolutely enraged and disgusted, you know? But at the same time, I'm not going to say that should be canceled. I'm just not going to do that because they have the same freedom that I have. And likewise, I could preach the clear gospel and that could be just as offensive to them because of their allegiances as that video is to me because of my allegiances. And so, and that's a road that we need to walk as Christians and not fall into the cancel culture of today by trying to push off our responsibility to socially uphold good ideas and reject bad ideas and put it onto government and cede the territory of language to governments mandating what we say and don't say. Yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely think we need to live to a higher, whatever adjective you want to use, maybe ethical or spiritual standard.
Yeah, right on.
To what the current legislation is. And from there, that gives us as the church the ability to step into that with biblical definition of love. Because
come on,
like if we, for example, quick example, like if we legislate out certain ideas that we don't like as a church, guess what? Like at some point or another, they're going to turn around and do the same on the Bible. Josue, do you have anything to add, man?
No. I mean, it's really great points, you know, because I think it's really interesting in terms of like, I remember when that came out and everybody was just so, outraged and understandably, because of what they were portraying. But I just kind of think about, I just love that point that you made about if you were to really preach a really clear gospel, man, it's going to be the same amount of offense as somebody else. So it makes it kind of hard to, because if we kind of continue down cancel culture as it presently is constructed, in a few years, Christianity is going to be like, we're going to be canceled, and there's no amount of rights in America that's going to defend anything. We're going to be at a point where we're canceled because according to a lot of people in the world, everything that we spew is hate. And so that's kind of just the trend. I saw this thing, I don't know if I shared with you guys or not, but I saw this thing where it was like, God sending people to hell is cancel culture. That was the funniest thing I've seen on Twitter. That made me laugh so much. I was like, wow, that's hilarious. But that's kind of what people are thinking now. That's kind of where some people's minds are at, and so I guess just even the whole cancel culture thing it's so interesting to me.
I will have a caveat though, because there's also been, you've probably seen it online, the whole thing about cuties on Netflix. Now that's somewhere where I draw the line, where it's
is that the one with the kids?
Yeah, with the kids. Yeah. Now that's like the exploitation of children and something that I do 100% believe that it is, that's not just offensive to like one group or to one different perspective. It's the exploitation of children. It's a different category.
As well, it's illegal.
That's exactly right.
Simply.
It's illegal. So it's like, and that's like, so where do you draw the line? Well, that's my line. But other than that, I think freedoms. Yeah, I think we should be the defender of freedoms, recognizing that freedoms are they're not the be all end all. They're not the goal. Like the kingdom of God is the goal, but because of the kingdom of God, by necessity, the Lord produces something in us that will fight for another person's freedoms who don't even believe what we believe. And that's really been a trait that has been characteristic of every society that has been born out of Judeo-Christian values. So
because that's the byproduct of Christianity, is this unique idea that we're the only faith that is inclusive through exclusivity, by Jesus commanding us to love our enemies and love everyone, and the opportunity for all to come to know him, yet still having the exclusiveness of, and I'm just using that word because it's the only word we really have for it in the English language, but basically with heaven and hell and believers and those who are in his presence and everything like that. And even with hell, I can't remember who it was I had this conversation with, but Tim Keller brings up this point in Reason for God. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think it's a Raul I was talking with it about. At the end of the day, heaven or hell, basically, it's just God giving the person what they actually desire.
Very true.
And hell is just absence from God, because the person spent their whole life just pursuing something other than Jesus and who he is. And so I know, kind of wrapping it up here, we'll give you the opportunities to share any last pieces of wisdom or encouragement you'd like to share to anyone or into just American culture right now. As well, if you'd want to do this, just depending on whatever you want to do, because I know I texted you this. If you would like to share any resources or teachers or anyone that you've been receiving encouragement or wisdom from during this time, so that our listeners are able to have that, I think that could be good.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think to your first, actually you hit on it a little bit earlier regarding, and I'm going to go there. I know we don't have much time. It is super controversial in our day, but the topic of white privilege. So I'm half black, half white. I was intentionally, because of my mother, taken out of America when I was 6 years old to Australia, because she foresaw that the culture would be better for me to be raised in Australia. And I just want to put to the perspective that I have lived a privileged life, in that the mindset that was passed to me was one of a way of thinking that produces privilege, or like produces a work ethic that creates privilege. In every culture. So when I go back through my lineage, on the African American side, my whole lineage was a very, very privileged people in the sense of their mindset, and from the sense of their outside pressures, they were definitely not privileged, but they were very successful people, whether in the area of the kingdom or whether in the area of their businesses, whatever, only because of the mindset they were given. So what we're experiencing today is a clash of mindsets, and you cannot fix with exterior pressures or lack of pressures by removing pressures something that has to do with mindsets. If I, as a result of believing that I cannot succeed, end up go through life, it doesn't matter what pressures are against me or for me, I will produce what I believe. Likewise, if I believe that I can overcome any obstacle, regardless of the obstacles of racism, of hatred, of bigotry, of whatever's coming against me, I will overcome those because of what I believe. And that is a biblical principle of faith and trusting in what righteousness and identity God has provided for us. And that's something that I think is just, it puts a completely different spin on the whole argument of today, because we're no longer now trying to fix an outside enemy. Instead, we're trying to shift an internal fortitude and drive. And that's one thing that I'm very grateful that my mum was born again, because that's the fruit of being born again. And that's exactly why, like I look at so many others, it doesn't matter the color of their skin. With that mindset and that kingdom mindset, the fruit is good, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there is definitely the opportunity for us as men and women of God to step into places where we haven't stepped before, in communities and in cultures that haven't heard those voices and those perspectives, for us to step into those places and to bring genuine healing and to bring a different perspective
And hope.
and hope. Yeah. And I won't go into super detail on this, but I just want to put before I think a lot of what we're experiencing is the evidence of a spirit of rejection, and it's not actually. Yes, lawlessness is at work at the moment. Yes, there's hatred, there's bigotry, there's all of these different things at work at the moment. But at the core of it, there is a real rejection spirit that is further trying to harden the hearts of the church against the lawless. And that's how a spirit of rejection works. Is it works in the person who feels rejected, to further make themselves repugnant to the person rejecting by rejecting themselves and pulling away and doing things that are against the other person. And what America is experiencing right now is rejection. The Black American culture for the longest time has been rejected, including in the church, rejected by white America. And that's why you have two different streams. And in large part, that wound has been left unhealed. And so when all of these symptoms come up, we try to attack it from a different perspective, when this is a spirit of rejection, the same way that you would deal with that in your own individual heart, where that needs to be uprooted by the kingdom of God, by the love of Jesus, and by walking that road of embrace and going through the hard, prickly times that come against you in that healing process. So yeah, that's like something that I think are just two little twists on the common perspective and common narratives of today, because it's very easy to continue to harden your heart by missing what this thing is about. It's very easy to see the destruction happening around the country and have an opinion about it that isn't the heart of God. So that's that. And then what was the other question? You had a really good.
Basically, if you have any teachers,
resources,
anything like that.
Man, I have to throw it to my main man, Michael Miller, at Upper Room. His teaching on critical keys to not being critical, him and Larissa Miller, as well as Reward Sabunda, just the way that they have unpacked this in an articulate, clear, delineated way, kingdom way, and just like, not only there's like something for every heart. There is the perspective of the heart of God coming from Larissa Miller, and then just like this really intelligent, well thought out, really sharp perspective coming from Miller. And then there is this beautiful grand macro perspective of just like the grand scheme at large from Reward. And so those are three resources, all from Upper Room, that I would say are just incredible, and definitely go there. I believe you can get their podcast from online. Yeah. So.
Yep. I've been listening to that a lot. You can find it on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify podcast app, anything like that. Just simply search, I think, Upper Room Dallas podcast, and it'll be their most recent ones. So, Josue, you got anything you want to add, man?
You guys see that Christian sway I'm doing right now?
Yeah, man.
You guys listening probably don't see, but man, thank you for coming on. That was great. I think even just from the first time, when we met you and hearing you speak, you could just tell he was a man full of wisdom, and just, I know we focused on, a certain thing, there was something we wanted to talk about, but you could just tell from a lot of responses that you gave that there was just so much depth to everything that you were saying.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming on, for educating us, for teaching us, helping us with love and all these different things as well. I think that's very important. And just even knowing that you're a man of God and God has given you so many gifts and talents, and just, really excited to see all those things come about, and just in different ways that's expressed. So I'm really excited about that. So man, thank you for blessing.
Thank you guys.
Us.
Thank you. This is an incredible opportunity, and I love having these conversations. Full stop. So whether there's other people listening or not, it's just fun to me. So thank you so much.
Of course.
And let's do it again sometime.
For sure. And
you guys are awesome.
And we're really excited to see everything that'll happen with you and Amanda, and just everything that the Lord has planned for y'all. Because his plans are good, and y'all are obedient and faithful, and so he will reward that. But y'all, that'll be a wrap for us today. Again, big thanks to Jordan for taking the time to come out here and just hang with us a little bit. We'll put all of his information, his social media handles, everything in the description if you want to reach out to him, ask any questions, anything like that as well. All of our information here at Perspectives will be in the description if you'd like to make a donation to keep the podcast, keep the local outreaches going, everything like that. And always, if you liked this week's episode, please comment, share, review, everything like that. So until next time, much love. God bless.
Sounds good.